What if everything you thought you knew about Jesus was incomplete? What if the true legacy of Christ wasn't nailed to a cross, but passed down through blood? For centuries, whispers of a secret bloodline, a line of descent from Jesus himself, have echoed through cathedrals, royal courts, secret societies, and occult texts, called heresy by the church, claimed as truth by mystics, explored in fiction, but never fully buried. Today, we go beyond the veil, into the mystery of Christ's descendants, the politics of early Christianity, and the underground forces that may have protected his bloodline for 2,000 years. Let's dive into the forbidden history of the bloodline of Jesus. Chapter 1. The Magdalene Connection. The story begins not with Jesus alone, but with Mary Magdalene, the most controversial woman in Christian history. For centuries, the church labeled her a reformed prostitute. But in the Gnostic Gospels, texts banned from the Bible, she is portrayed as Jesus' closest disciple, his confidant, and possibly his wife. The Gospel of Philip calls her the companion of Jesus and says he loved her more than the other disciples. The Gospel of Mary shows her not only receiving secret teachings, but also being challenged by Peter, who felt uncomfortable with her authority. This clash between Peter and Mary is symbolic, institutional hierarchy versus mystical revelation. It reflects the battle between two versions of Christianity, one based on external control and one rooted in inner awakening. Could Mary Magdalene have been more than a disciple? Could she have been the Holy Bride and the mother of a divine bloodline? Chapter 2. Did Jesus have a child? The canonical Gospels are silent, but early Christian sects weren't. Some traditions, particularly in the Eastern churches, preserved stories of a holy family that continued beyond the cross. According to these accounts, Mary Magdalene fled with her child, or children, to Gaul, now southern France, along with a small band of followers. Their journey became part of local legend, especially in the towns of Provence. The site Sainte-Marie de la Mer is still a pilgrimage site today. French oral traditions speak of Mary the Egyptian, Mary the mother, and Sarah the daughter. Were these symbolic figures, or real women tied to the blood of Jesus? Some believe Sarah was the daughter of Christ and Magdalene, the literal Grail. Chapter 3. The Holy Grail. Not a cup, but a womb. The myth of the Holy Grail is usually imagined as a chalice used at the Last Supper. But etymologically, sang Grail can also be interpreted as sang real, royal blood. This theory was made famous in Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and later exploded in pop culture with the Da Vinci Code. In this version of the story, the Grail isn't an object. It's a person, or more precisely, a lineage. A sacred bloodline, kept hidden for centuries, protected by secret orders, and encoded in everything from cathedrals to Renaissance art. The Grail becomes not just a relic, but a revelation that the divine and human were never separate, that the body, and even sexuality, could be sacred. Chapter 4. The Merovingians, Blood of the King. From Gaul, we jump to the Merovingian dynasty, rulers of the Franks between the 5th and 8th centuries. The Merovingians were unique. They claimed semi-divine origin. They wore their hair long in defiance of Roman custom. And they practiced a form of kingship that was mystical, not just political. Authors like Bagent, Lee, and Lincoln argue that the Merovingians were direct descendants of Jesus and Magdalene. If true, it would mean that Christ's bloodline sat on European thrones, and that modern monarchies might trace their right to rule not through conquest, but through divinity. The implications are staggering. This would make the church subordinate to a family line it tried to erase. Chapter 5. The Priory of Sion, Guardians of the Blood. To protect the line, legend tells of a secret society, the Priory of Sion. Its alleged Grand Masters include names like Leonardo da Vinci, Nicolas Flamel, Isaac Newton, Jean Cocteau. While historians argue over the priory's authenticity, its symbolism endures. Hidden codes in paintings, encoded maps, rituals tied to sacred geometry, all hint at a story buried beneath official history. Some believe the Priory's true purpose was to reveal the bloodline when the world was ready. Are we ready now? Chapter 6. Cathars, Templars, and Heresy by Fire. In southern France, a group called the Cathars arose in the 12th century. They believed in a dualistic universe. Spirit good, matter corrupt. They rejected the church hierarchy. They revered Mary Magdalene. Some believe they also guarded the secret of the bloodline. The church's response: the Albigensian Crusade, a genocidal war. At Montségur, hundreds of Cathars were burned alive. Their last words spoke of a great treasure hidden before the fortress fell. Was it gold? Or was it knowledge? Perhaps genealogical records, or gospels that prove the sacred lineage. The Knights Templar, formed shortly after, are often linked to these same secrets. They were accused of heresy, tortured, and exterminated. But their rituals survived, passed into Freemasonry and secret societies around the world. Chapter 7. The Vatican Strikes Back. Why would the Church fight so hard to suppress this story? Because it would destroy the foundation of papal authority. If Jesus had a family, then celibacy is optional, not divine. The Church is not the sole mediator of grace. Sacredness can be inherited, not just preached. In short, it hands power back to the people. The idea that Christ's teachings are about direct spiritual awakening, not blind obedience, is dangerous to institutions. That's why the Gnostic texts were banned. That's why the Magdalene was smeared. That's why the Grail myth had to be recast as legend. D'Abri Sant. Chapter 8. Modern Echoes. Who bears the blood today? Is the bloodline still alive? Some say yes. That certain European families, the Habsburgs, Sinclairs, even the Windsors, carry traces of divine ancestry. Others say the bloodline has dispersed, hidden in plain sight, among common people, activated not by status, but by spiritual DNA. There are modern claimants, genealogical researchers, occult orders, all searching for the Grail in genetics, documents, or visions. But maybe the real Grail isn't about a family. Maybe it's a state of being. A way of walking the world with sacred awareness, balancing masculine and feminine, matter and spirit. Chapter 9. Symbolic Truth versus Literal Lineage. Was there literally a child? A marriage? A dynasty? Maybe. But even if not, the story has value. It tells us that love is sacred. That truth is worth protecting. That power can be rooted in spirit, not domination. The bloodline narrative is a mirror. It reflects our hunger for connection, for inheritance, for a story that means we're not alone. Jesus was not just a teacher. He was a seed. And the bloodline? It may be in our veins, our dreams, or our actions. The choice is yours. Chapter 10. Conclusion. The blood never dies. Whether myth, metaphor, or fact, the bloodline of Jesus continues to stir the soul. Because it challenges empire. Because it redeems the feminine. Because it asks us to rethink what divinity really means. And maybe that's the point. Not to prove it with DNA or documents, but to live like it's true. To carry the sacred in our blood. Because in the end, perhaps the greatest heresy is forgetting that we are divine.